Hi there, my name is Sifiso Falala. I am with the African Genius Awards. Today we are honored to have with us Professor Sandrine Mubenga from the University of Toledo, currently touring and teaching at Wits University. Welcome, Professor. If you can just briefly tell us about yourself. I know you're an electrical engineer, which sounds very, very impressive. Congratulations on your outstanding academic qualifications. Maybe if you can unpack that briefly for us.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, my name is Professor Sandrine Mubenga. I'm an electrical engineer and I'm an associate professor of electrical engineering at the University of Toledo in Ohio in the USA, which is where I conducted my studies. I did my bachelor, my master, and my PhD degree at the University of Toledo. And I was honored to receive the Fulbright US Scholar Award to conduct research and teaching at the University of Witwatersrand, also known as Wits. So I'm here for 1 year in South Africa doing research and teaching in renewable energy. And the research I'm working on here is how to use renewable energy to mitigate load shedding and looking at the regulatory framework for it.
Professor, you are one of the nominees for our African Genius Awards. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The nomination came quite early in 2022, and we've been following your outstanding work since that time. Can you tell us, renewable energy sounds like a big topic these days. Can you just unpack it for us in terms of the work that you're doing in South Africa and maybe elsewhere in Africa?
Yes, renewable energy is a huge topic. It is the topic of the moment because the entire world is fighting climate change. It's a global fight. And when you look at Africa, we have a lot of research when it comes to renewable energy. We have hydroelectricity, we have solar, we have a huge potential for hydrogen, which is an energy carrier. And the research I'm focusing on is renewable energy. I have taken an electric vehicle and made it hybrid so that it could run using hydrogen. That is part of the research I did. And I also created a station that generate hydrogen using solar power. So the way that stations work, it takes water and takes solar power from solar panel and breaks down the water in hydrogen and oxygen. And then this hydrogen, we can pump it back to the car and drive around with the car. So what is special about hydrogen when you use a fuel cell in that manner is that the only byproduct coming from running this car is that it produces electricity and water.
Wow.
So it's clean technology. And while we were doing hydrogen electricity, that was back in 2008, when I was doing that research, we were producing hydrogen from solar because the idea is to reduce the carbon emission. So if you use coal, if you use electricity produced from coal or fossil fuel to generate hydrogen, then it doesn't make sense really. So for the hydrogen to make sense, it has to be what we call green hydrogen, produced from green sources. So as part of my research, we developed a hydrogen generating station. And other than that, I have experience in the field and in the industry as an entrepreneur, conceiving and installing solar power. I actually was trained to be a solar integrator, going on the roof, putting the solar panel. And as a professional engineer who received my license in the state of Ohio in 2011, I was allowed to, I was designing the utility scale solar field. There's a field, for instance, that's not far from the University of Toledo where I teach. It's in the city called Napoleon. It's a 4.2 megawatt solar field that powers 380 homes in the state of Ohio. That's my design. In terms of renewable energy also, I started a company called Smin Power Group in the DRC in 2013 to provide electricity. So we had an office in Kinshasa, and we were designing and installing solar systems.
Okay.
So that's the renewable. And with that piece, you also need to have the storage. So that's why I conduct research with the batteries also.
We'll get into the batteries and in a minute. What I just need us to record are the innovations and the research that you've done and your specific contributions to this field. What we do not want to do, Prof, is one day we wake up, we start reading. Did you know that it was actually Professor Mubenga who actually came, who invented? Someone else might, elsewhere in the world, might have taken credit for something that you did. And I know you mentioned your hydrogen project. Didn't get too many of the details because it's fairly technical, but you can explain in simpler terms. What specific research assignments and innovations have you been involved in that we can record as your projects?
So there are quite a few of them. So I'm going to focus on first in terms of battery management system. I invented a tool to help design battery management system. And why do I talk about battery? When you look at electric vehicle, you look at renewable energy. Renewable energy is intermittent. So that energy produced from renewable has to be stored somewhere. And most of the time, they are stored in batteries so that people can use that electricity. Now, the problem with the batteries is that they don't last long. And sometimes some of them, the lithium-ion battery, which are the ones that are widely used because they have the highest energy density, they can catch fire. What makes them the best in terms of energy density is because of their electrolyte that's inside the battery. But that electrolyte that allows you to store a lot of energy is also volatile. So if you overcharge a little bit the battery, it catches fire. That's why when you go into a plane, they refuse to get lithium-ion batteries because they can catch fire. So it's important to have a piece of equipment, it's called an equalizer, in the battery management system to balance the charges within the battery. And when you do that, you increase the capacity of the battery. What does it mean for you and I? It means that if you are using, let's say, an electric vehicle, the electricity you discharge from the battery is going to be, you have a better capacity, basically. So you can run longer or drive longer, basically. So it's important to manage the battery, and I have a patent because I developed a tool to help design quickly those battery management systems. I also helped develop a type of equalizer that is hybrid that allows basically to reduce the cost of battery management system while increasing the performance. So that's in terms of battery management system. And also I've had the opportunity to be the CEO of the Electricity Regulatory Authority in the Democratic Republic of the Congo since 2020. And as such, we have really pushed for renewable energy. So when I took over the Electricity Regulatory Authority in 2020, I'm the first CEO. So basically, we were building the Electricity Regulatory Authority. And so the installed capacity of the DRC was around 2,700 megawatts of electricity. And 5 years later, we are at 3,646 megawatts. So that's a basically 22% increase of installed capacity as part of our contribution. And as we did that, we were focusing on hydroelectricity because the Congo has the Congo River, which is the second, in terms of flow in the world, second largest river in terms of flow in the world after the Amazon River. I think now it became the first when I checked lately. But it has many affluents. So we have a lot of potential for hydroelectricity, and that's what we are seeing the most. We also have a lot of solar systems. So what we do, we look at the avoided CO2 thanks to renewable energy. That's part of the report that we do every year. And I'm happy to share that in 2024, the Democratic Republic of the Congo avoided about 9.5 million ton equivalent of CO2 because of renewable energy. So those are some of the contributions that we've been able to make because as a regulator, a lot of people don't know what regulation does. But basically, the regulator is the institution that sets the rule for the electricity sector in a country. So if a company wants to generate, distribute, transport electricity, import, export, or retail, they have to come to the regulator to get all the permits. They have to come to the regulator to get the tariff, how much they are going to sell the electricity. If they have an issue, two companies have issues, they come to the regulator for dispute resolution. And the role of the regulator is also to protect the right of the end users. If, for some reason, when the power comes back on and you have overvoltage that burns a house for a person, for a resident, if they file a complaint with their utility company and the utility company doesn't do anything, they come back to the regulator.
No, thank you. Professor, your role as an inventor is quite impressive, and yet you still wanted to be a part of what is happening in the DRC, in Africa. Why is that? What is driving that passion? You were educated in the US, you are teaching in the US, you are at WITS now, but there seems to be something that makes you feel that you need to make a contribution in the DRC. What is that?
Thank you for this question, and that is a fundamental question. I'm originally from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I was born in Kinshasa, and after I was born, my father used to be a diplomat for the United Nations. So every 2 years, we had to travel from countries to countries. So basically, I grew up in Congo, Belgium, France, Senegal, Belgium, and then my father took his early retirement. When he took his early retirement, he wanted to go back to the Congo to build a university, to start a university with his friend in the township where he was born, in the rural area. It was called Kikwit. So at the age of 12 years old, after having seen the world, we came back to live in a rural area in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So that's where I studied. I did my high school in Kikwit. So I grew up in Kikwit, and that's where also we went through Ebola. Back in 95, we went through the AFDL, the War of Liberation. I was in Kikwit. And a personal event that gave me purpose is when I got sick when I was 17. Kikwit is a small town where there was no water, there was no electricity. So if you wanted to watch TV, you needed to have your own power generator at home. And I love taking care of the power generator. I love to start it, change take care of it. And unfortunately, I got sick. I had appendicitis. And the doctor told me that I had to go under surgery urgently. However, the Hospital General at Kikwit did not have any fuel. So for 3 days, I was between life and death because there was no fuel, there was no electricity to do the surgery on me. So at that time, I turned to my faith and I said, Lord, if you allow me to live through this, I will dedicate my life to find solutions so that places like Kikwit will have electricity in the future. So that experience between life and death in Kikwit for 3 days gave me a purpose to become an electrical engineer. So after that experience, really I'm very passionate about finding energy solutions so that people can better their lives in places, especially like Kikwit.
Wow, that's a touching story. May that inspiration that you gained, help many people, villages, remote locations in places like kit to have access to not just electricity, water, and all necessary amenities so that their lives might be successful. But thank you that you had that experience, because we have benefited so much. As far as your journey as an inventor, do you still have other milestones, other things, targets that you have that you'd like to do? Or is this it in terms of coming up with new innovations?
No, I don't think it's it. It's, ideas come all the time, but wait and see. I'm not. I don't talk too much. This is an interview. That's why I'm talking so much. But typically, I don't talk. I prefer to act.
Right.
So I will do something in my lab until it works, and then I will show it off. But I will not necessarily announce this is what I'm working on. So there are a lot of things I'm seeing, a lot of potential. And I think AI is opening a new way that is very interesting in terms of science. I see the energy future, like the energy sector is very in demand. I don't know if people realize, but you can see here in South Africa how much every day in the news it's about ESCOM, it's about NERSA, it's about water, it's about electricity. These are very important topics, and there's a huge potential. So to prepare, because it's one thing to have the potential, the other thing is to be prepared to act on it. So basically, you have to be in a position where you prepare yourself until the opportunity comes.
So the AGA, for which you were nominated in 2022, and you were fairly successful. You scored very highly through all the indicators that are used to calibrate the contribution of an African genius, and they include problem-solving skills, which you've demonstrated quite abundantly, as well as global competitiveness. There is no doubt, if you're an inventor, that your contributions are globally competitive. But most importantly as well, self-love and patriotism. So let's talk about that a little bit, because it seems to be something that is close to you. What is your view? What would you like Africa to look like, let's say, in the next 5 to 10 years? What would satisfy you? What would you like to see in Africa for you to say, this is what I want?
What I can say about self-love, I think what I would like to see in a few years from Africa, I would like to see innovation built through collaborations with more researchers from African countries finding African solutions. I would like to see the elders working more with the youth to help them, teach them how to find the solutions. And that is something that drove me back in 2018 to start STEM DRC initiative. STEM DRC initiative, it's a non-profit organization that we started to instill the youth to be interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. Because I believe that STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, is the future of Africa. And we have the capacity to do it. The problem that we have sometimes is that we may not have the financial need. And that's why we started giving scholarships back in 2018 to students in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Since then, we gave out 185 scholarships. We started the first STEM center in Walungu. We did not open it in Kinshasa. We opened it in the eastern, in a village, in the eastern part of DRC, to have a lab where students can come and do STEM research and, learn about STEM with different kits. And we also, when COVID hits, as you said, problem solving is the key. When COVID hit us, we learned that in the Congo at the time, there were only 2,000 ventilators for a population of about 90 million people at the time. So in the US, I was seeing all that was being done. You know, you had the auto manufacturer building ventilator. That was the presidential order. Auto manufacturer like Ford were building ventilator for people. So I thought, what's going to happen in Congo? We only have 2,000 ventilators. We need to build a ventilator in the DRC that can be done in the DRC. So with STEM DRC initiative, we partnered with the University of Loyola in Congo, SASCOM, and then Mutombo Dikembe, the basketter, he had a hospital. So the hospital for Mutombo Dikembe. And we built 2 prototypes of ventilators in the DRC during COVID. After we built those 2 prototypes of ventilators with young Congolese students, then I had a friend who was a doctor from the World Bank, and she told me that beyond COVID, there is a lack of oxygen in the DRC because sometimes you have newborns that do not have enough lung capacity to breathe, so they need to have oxygen. And you have people that have other diseases that require oxygen. But she told me people are dying because there's not enough oxygen. I told them, you know what? Back in 2008, I produced oxygen. When I was doing the research with the hydrogen car and producing hydrogen, since we were splitting the water in hydrogen and oxygen, we were using the hydrogen but releasing the oxygen. So how about we produce oxygen in the DRC? So under COVID, we worked with the World Bank, with my team as Team DRC, and we visited the first thing was to assess the need for oxygen. So we visited the 5 different places that had the most need. We interviewed different hospitals to see how much oxygen do you need? How do you get oxygen right now? How much does it cost? How long does someone have to wait if they have a need for oxygen? So they would tell us they have to wait 7 days, 13 days. We have to go to such and such place to get the oxygen. So after we assessed the need for oxygen in the major cities, then we had to define, okay, how are we going to produce the oxygen? And I was leading that research because I had done it in the past. So we were looking at different ways to produce oxygen. And the method that we selected that was the more, because it was oxygen, clinical grade oxygen, so it has to be pure at 99.995% for people to use. So the best way and most effective way to produce oxygen with that clinical grade was using PSA method. So after we did that, we had to find the different manufacturer of PSA oxygen units in the world. So we did an internal bid with companies that would make those machines. And basically, after we completed this project with the World Bank, we have 8 oxygen units producing oxygen today. And they produce around 22,000 liters of oxygen per day. That is something that we did with a STEM DRC initiative. So problem solving is the key.
That's truly amazing because you are on the ground, you are addressing everyday experiences and also addressing everyday problems. It's not something that's theoretical, which is what often becomes the criticism of academic institutions, that they have all these technical terms, but on the ground you don't see organizations such as STEM DRC, because the STEM DRC is on the ground and providing solutions. You mentioned about AI, and it's obviously quite prevalent everywhere that one looks nowadays. What do you see as its impact on the teaching of electrical engineering and maybe accelerating the solutions around renewable energy, which is maybe a slightly different field, but we can start with the impact of AI. It's not a trick question, but how do you see it playing a role there?
You know, it feels like a trick question.
Yeah.
You know, every time I meet a professor, that's the question. Do we go with AI? Do we teach with it or not? Because it has a lot of implication. AI has a huge potential. The only issue as a teacher I have with AI is that if the student don't have the maturity AI is not going to help you because then the student will copy paste, and I'm talking about, Chat GPT, those
Yeah.
type of AI,
Yeah.
because the more advanced one is not yet used mainly.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, I feel that AI is creating what you call pseudo-knowledge.
Yeah.
People feel they know something, but they don't because it doesn't reach the part of the brain where real knowledge is, where problem solving is. Bloom has a taxonomy that has 7 levels of knowledge. The basic level is repetition, knowing the definition of something. The highest level of knowledge is designing something, implementing something. But AI makes people feel like they can design something, but they don't. They use AI to do it. So people are here at this level 1, but they think they are at level 7. That's the difficulty I have with AI. But we cannot ignore AI because regardless, it is here. So as a teacher, we have to allow students to use AI, but we have to give boundaries. Like you can use it to help you structure the text or something, but not to generate the idea. I'll give you an example. Like there was solar eclipse that took place back in 2024 in Toledo. And that was the first solar eclipse in, I believe, 150 years. So I told my student, I said, you know what? This is a once in a lifetime event. No class that day. Go observe the solar eclipse, and then you write an essay about it. Write an essay about it, and it's going to be for extra credit. So the solar eclipse came, was wonderful. And after that, I got the paper back, right? Extra credit. First chapter was the same for like half the students. Yes.
ChatGPT.
It was ChatGPT. The first chapter was the same everywhere. So I saw 2 or 3 versions of the same paper, and like some of the paragraphs were like copied. So I told myself, I'm like, this is how you feel. Like you look at the solar eclipse, this is how you feel. I mean, if you don't put the effort into doing that for extra credit, meaning if you don't do it, you don't lose any point. If you do it, you gain points. Then what is it going to be when you have a real problem?
But Prof, in terms of further research, like I see they say in medicine that it could unlock certain treatments that are currently not feasible in electrical engineering, perhaps with mature users of AI at an advanced, maybe super intelligence level. Is there a possibility of AI enhancing the work that people like yourself are already doing?
Yes, actually, in electrical engineering, or to be more precise, in power systems, for instance, there's a huge opportunity for AI for instance, to help you direct the flow of electricity. Let me give you an example. Here in South Africa, you have estates.
Yeah.
You have estates. If within the estate, and I'm just giving an example, you have solar panels within the estate, but right now, the estate is fed through the municipality.
Right.
Okay? And the municipality may have a contract with ESCOM, buys the power from ESCOM, and then distribute it to the estate. If within the estate, you have some type of energy management, so that the solar power that is within the estate is coupled with AI to direct the electricity based on the need within the estate. Let's say this house, people are not there, like they are on vacation, for instance. Like your neighbor is on vacation, you are not on vacation. So whatever electricity the neighbor produces can be sent to somewhere else when they are not there. These are things that can be done. The energy can be managed within the estate using AI. That's a potential that we can see right there with power systems. So there are a lot of practical ideas like that, but it requires more advanced AI and the infrastructure. AI doesn't come by itself. It needs to have the infrastructure where you can put that software integration. It's hardware plus software. It's never just the software. AI is software. but you need to have the hardware, and hardware is seen through the infrastructure.
The 7 levels of knowledge that you speak about, one might actually see them as not necessarily being a problem only with AI. There is a perception that in education, particularly in Africa, where there are problems that we haven't been able to solve for many years, that perhaps the education is not hitting the right notes, that it's not at the right level, that perhaps we are reciting, remembering, recalling things without getting to, you spoke about the design, where we assimilate the knowledge, gets immersed in it, and are able to design. I think apart from the AI discussion, do you, as an educator, do you have a view? Because what one needs to do to pass an exam is just to remember. And it's difficult to test whether one recalls what they read or if they actually recall and do understand it.
That's a great question. So I'm associate professor at the University of Toledo in the US. I'm currently doing my Fulbright here at Wits, teaching and doing research, but I also have experience with the University of Kinshasa. So after I finished my studies at Kikwit, something I didn't mention to you is I went to study for 1 year in Kinshasa, at the University of Kinshasa, in the Polytechnic, so which is the College of Engineering. It's called Polytechnic. And so after that, I went to the University of Toledo. So back in a couple of years ago, the dean of the Polytechnic contacted me and they asked me if I could help teach some of the classes. So I've been helping teach, during what is equivalent to summer, because the years are not the same time, right? So when it's summer in the US, I teach at the University of Kinshasa classes. So I have this direct contact with students, and I teach embedded systems. So embedded systems is basically when you have a robot or a microcontroller, like a chip. A microcontroller is a computer that is very small. An embedded system is any smart object, any computer that is used to accomplish a specific purpose. So an embedded system would be, for instance, your voltmeter that you use to measure voltage. Your calculator would be considered an embedded system. So I teach students how to design, program microcontroller to build embedded systems. So it has the hardware and software part of it. So this is one of the classes I teach at the University of Kinshasa. And there was also a class which is called Project, where they also have to conceive something and then build the prototype and test it to see, so the whole process. So what I can say is at the beginning, when I started teaching that class, what you said is true. A lot of the knowledge I had with the student was memorizing things. And the way I was teaching my class, I would bring the kit, the microcontroller kit, I give it to the student. And we have to design like the program. So you have to draw the algorithm. And then from the algorithm, you have to code it using C, which is a programming language. And once you code the microcontroller, then you plug it and you download it onto the microcontroller. And then you test your system right there. So the students at the beginning, they thought they could just pass the class with the definitions. And they learned fast that if it doesn't work, I cannot give 1,000 definitions. It's not going to work. So they saw that they really had to learn to understand in a practical way. I'm very practical. So that's kind of how I changed the teaching. Because when the dean approached me, he told me, Sandrine, this is the problem. When I look at the exam of the students, it's a lot of definition. It looks good. But when they come into my lab to work with the microcontroller, they don't know how to do it. How about you teach them that class? And so I taught them hands-on. So that's the piece that you need to add. The hands-on piece will make the students see what the system really does.
Many young girls kind of listening to this and looking at you would really be inspired. And I think that's the kind of work that you've been doing in the DRC, in the US and elsewhere. I'm sure it's not only in the DRC that you inspire students. However, I just wanted to speak a little bit about your dad, because people listening might think, you know, you had an advantage. It sounds like you have quite an outstanding father for what he did to say, let's go back to the village. And we always have discussions around the role of fathers or parents in terms of shaping future geniuses, shaping the quest for knowledge, shaping the way someone positions themselves in society. What can you say about him? What kind of a role did he play, apart from what you already told us, in terms of getting us to have this wonderful genius that we have in front of us?
Thank you. My father played a very important role because, you know, going back to the experience we had, you know, going back to Kikwit to build the first university with his friend, you know, to push for education, because he used to work at UNESCO. UNESCO is the United Nations for Education, Science and Culture. That's where he did his career, and that really inspired me also for the education part. And so he passed away, unfortunately, last year in August. Thank you. And for me, I think it was, we lived his example. It was not a story that somebody told us. We came back to Kikwit. He started the university with his friends. People graduated from their university, and they built another university. So that's the ripple effect of knowledge. And when you were asking me about what do I see for the future of Africa, I was thinking about Ubuntu, you know. I am because you are. So I will be successful because you are successful. I believe in reaching out to the next generation to make them successful. That's what I believe is important. Innovation also can happen and be more successful if we work together and bring together the next generation. That's what I believe.
Thank you very much, Professor Mubenga, for a wonderful discussion. We would like to, as African Genius Awards, wish you the best in your research, in your teaching, and the work that you're doing here in South Africa. That was Professor Mubenga talking to us about her wonderful inventions and some of the work that she's done in Africa, but also in the US, where she's an associate professor. Thank you very much.